Okay, so you've determined who you are. You're going to be authentic to yourself and to your brand. The next step is to determine who your target audience is. And again, I know this sounds silly because most of you think, well, of course I know who I'm selling to, and of course I know who my audience is, but I want you to be really careful with this step because I've seen a lot of business owners kind of fall into the trap of being a little bit more focused on one area and not realizing that maybe they're missing the mark on a completely different area. It's very important in the beginning to give yourself several different target audiences and then to constantly be tracking your reach and tracking your data to see what's working, who's actually responding, and then kind of go from there. For instance, Cook Cups is one of my favorite clients, actually my very first client, and I learned a lot from working with their social media marketing. When we first started out, I again kind of thought, well, he had several different lines of cups that he was doing, camping cups, golf cups. We had some kind of fun, tongue-in-cheek, witty cups. So I mixed it up a little bit in terms of, not entirely sure who would be purchasing the cups the majority of the time, but in my mind, I just assumed that it would be women. So what I started noticing is as I'm putting the ads out and I'm monitoring our data and monitoring our reach, I started realizing that his demographic was a lot more male than I assumed that it was. So I had been targeting towards the female audience and then realized that actually the numbers were showing me that there were a lot more men interested in his product. So I completely turned our marketing around, and for about 6 months, it's kind of funny. If you look back at the beginning of Cook Cup's Facebook page, it almost looks like a giant beer commercial because for about 6 months, there were a lot of ads that involved fire or breaking glass or race cars or bikinis or things like that. But it worked. I mean, there were a lot of people that were responding, and I think his demographic at that time was about 89% male that were buying the cups and looking at the cups and that was reaching. So what I started to do after we got our reach up, the organic reach kind of skyrocketed last year in terms of some football cups that we did. And I felt like we'd really kind of gotten a good hold on the male audience. And so now his ads over the course of the past 6 months or so have been softening up a little bit. We've been appealing a little bit more towards the female side and now getting him a nice, big, broad audience that he can work with. Another example would be Omaha Float Spa, who was actually my second client. And again, just a fantastic business. I believe so much in what they're doing. But when we first started working together, they were convinced that their niche audience was going to probably be CrossFitters and people who worked out pretty heavily because floating after a workout is just phenomenal. I encourage all of my clients to at least pick 3 targets. So we, obviously took the athletes, but then we added people that were dealing with, anxiety, stress, depression, PTSD, as well as pregnant mothers, because I think floating is fantastic. If I would have been able to float when I was pregnant, I would have been so happy to feel weightless for a while. So those were the 3 targets that we went with. They and I really kind of thought, the athletes, that's going to boom. Every time we post something, the athletes are going to jump on it. We had to really kind of focus on each ad that we created for different targets, obviously was created specifically for that target audience. So the athletes, we're going to be posting early in the morning. The imagery would be a little bit more geared towards athletes and people that are working out, a little bit more kind of edgy and CrossFit-ish, versus when we were dealing with the people that were a little more anxiety and stress related. Those posts were generally posted kind of more in the evening and the imagery was a little bit softer. What we found out was, we post something for athletes and maybe our reach would be 350, 400 organically, and we'd post something for along the lines of PTSD, anxiety, stress, depression. They would shoot through the roof and our reach would jump to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. So that was a market that we were really, really speaking to and really helping. So it kind of, I think you have to do a couple of different things. Come up with at least 3 different targets that we want to try in the beginning, and then you're going to be monitoring your data as you go along and seeing exactly who you're speaking to, what ads are working for each person, what colors are working, what font styles, what imagery. I will be able to help you a lot with that as far as like the sociology, psychology side of that in our creating content module course that I do. But just at least starting off kind of picking 3 different targets and what you think might speak to them, rather than just limiting yourself to what you think you already know. Open your eyes a little bit more and see what you can offer different groups, who your other potential audience could be, and let's try reaching them as well. And we'll move on to the 3rd step in the next video.